with various backgrounds. I'm located in Fishtown, so I will be the one in the park afterwards. I'll run over here after we wrap this up, taking questions. Audrey is in sort of like Germantown, Mount Airy area, and Rebecca is now recently just outside the city in Norristown. So we see clients all over the city and a little bit outside of the city. We do in-home stuff. We'll be having classes rolling out soon. Yeah, that's a very basic introduction to us. All right, so we have a presentation today about body language. And so why is it so important to learn how to speak dog? Well, you'll be learning how to read your dog's emotional state. It will help improve your bond. It will improve your training. It will build your dog's confidence, reduce stress and anxiety. So it covers the gambit of a lot of things. You know, if you feel like you're just confused about what's going on with your dog, you don't know why they're doing what they're doing, if you can learn about what they're trying to communicate with you, it'll help maybe get in there and slow some stuff down or speed it up or whatever it is we're trying to do. A lot of behavioral issues come from us just not knowing exactly what's going on. They're speaking one language and we're speaking another, and that can be really frustrating. No one wants to just be talking to themselves, right? That's not fun. Okay, I need to move this real quick, sorry. Okay, here we go. All right, so it's really important to read the whole body and keep that in mind when you're looking at your dog. So a lot of times we tend to focus on one body part and be like, no, they're great, they're super happy because they're wagging their tail, for instance. But the tail wagging can mean a lot of things, especially depending on the dog itself and the context of the situation. So you want to make sure you're looking at the whole dog itself so that you can put it all together and see like, okay, he's wagging his tail, but he's showing his teeth. You know, maybe that doesn't mean he's happy, for instance. You know, there's a lot of variations of that. But just keep that in mind when you're looking at this. Audrey, Rebecca, feel free to jump in whenever you want if I am skipping over stuff, because I feel like I might be halfway. Okay, next slide. Pay attention to the context, which I kind of mentioned already. You know, how your dog looks at home when they're comfortable and they're with their family and they know the house and they know what to expect, they're probably fairly calm. You know, outside might look different because, you know, there's a million things going on. There's smells, there's sights, there's other dogs, there's people. So you can really see a total, you know, extreme change in your dog. That might also be, they're great on walks, but once they get to the vet or maybe once they get into the dog park, things change just because of the environment of just sort of the vibe, really, you know, depending on who the dogs are that day. So you want to take a gander at who your dog is and keep that in mind. You know, there's, just like with people, there are introverted dogs and there are extroverted dogs. And that's okay. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong. It just means they're, you know, that's their preference. So if you have a dog who's maybe a little on the shyer side or a little more introverted, maybe that's not the dog you take, you know, out to the coffee shop to sit outside or, you know, one of those types of things. Leave them at home instead of taking them to the parties, right? Okay, and each dog is different. So physical differences. What does your dog's body posture look like? Just neutral. Each dog has their own dialect and go-to methods of communication. So we have these three dogs here who are really good examples of who kind of break the mold. So this dog on the far left is Boston. You know, he just naturally has those big ol' eyes, right? Which on another dog, you'd be like, wow, that dog is sort of stressed. His eyes are really wide open, but that dog, that's just what he looks like. And then we have the Samoyed in the middle, and he's got this big floofy tail that sort of sits on his back, which, you know, a tail that's sort of upright like that could indicate that they're sort of stressed or ready for action, I guess, if you will. But that's just how his tail is. That's how it naturally lays. So, you know, in his case, that isn't an indication of that. And then we have this Shar-Pei over here who looks like he's giving the meanest side eye in the whole universe, but that is just what his face looks like because he has a zillion wrinkles. So, you know, just keep in mind what your dog looks like when they're just feeling just neutral when nothing's going on, and that's sort of your starting point, and then looking for the changes, that's your jump off point, looking for the changes from there. Again, and like these ears on this Boston too, his ears are always upright, so that doesn't really tell you that he's like super alert, that's just where his ears sit normally. Okay. All right, so general guidelines for reading body language. So if your dog is sort of loose and wiggly, that's a good indication that they're pretty happy and relaxed. You know, so if you're seeing a dog, you know, like just a little goofy puppy or whatever, you're like, okay, I know what's going on here. And then if you're seeing tension in the body, there's a very scientific word of runt row typed here, which means basically if you're seeing tension in the body, then that's an indication that they're feeling some kind of way, right? That maybe something has changed, maybe they caught a smell. It's information. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the world is ending, but it's good to kind of take note. And then we have here, take note of what neutral looks like on your dog, which I kind of already said. So pay attention to their ear, their mouth, their eye, the tail positioning, and where the dog's weight is leaning. And that can all really help you kind of see what, you know, what they're planning to do next, really. And here's two really good examples of, you know, this golden right here is just like smiling, and he's just like, cool, whatever you're into, I'm down, let's do this. And this other dog's like, I might have some feelings about some things. If you were to move forward, I may not like that so much. And I think that's a pretty good illustration there of the difference. Okay, next one. All right, now we're going to get into the nitty gritty here. So calming cutoff signals. So you probably have seen these before and maybe been like, that seems weird. These are out of nowhere. And these are ways that dogs can communicate to each other and to us, sort of that they're feeling that they don't maybe like what's going on, or maybe they just like feel a little, they're just like not sure what's going on. So some examples are looking and turning away. And again, you want to think about this in the context of like, you know, if there was a sound and they're looking at where the sound came from, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the stuff sort of out of context, like it's just changing all of a sudden. So like looking, turning away, sniffing for no apparent reason, scratching, sudden interest in person or object, stopping, weight shifted back, lip licking. So like this guy over here on the far right on the top, and yawning. So you might see this stuff like maybe two dogs meet for the first time, and you know that's sort of stressful. And then you see one that sort of just starts sniffing all of a sudden the ground, and that's really normal. That's sort of the dog being like, okay, I'm not a threat. Whatever. Hey, what's going on? Super cool dude right here. You don't have to worry about me. And that's sort of what they're trying to illustrate. And these are all good things. These are all things that they're trying to just like ease the situation, or just show that they come in peace, if you will. Okay, Audrey, Rebecca doesn't want to chime in. I'm just looking at you guys. You can't see that I'm looking at you. I'm like, guys, okay. All good?
Yeah, I think, I think probably just to put this in context of like something you might see at the dog park. So I see this a lot. And again, just piggybacking off of what Rebecca said, these are out of context signals. So like if all of a sudden your dog stops what they're doing and starts scratching themselves, right? Take a look in the environment and be like, did something new happen? So maybe a new dog came into view, maybe a person came into the room, and those are good indicators that these are reactions to things happening around them, instead of just like, oh, I'm itchy. But one thing I often see at the dog park is that sudden interest in a person or an object. So if a dog's interacting with another dog, you'll probably see some other cutoff signals. So like looking away, they might start sniffing the ground. And then often they'll be like, oh my gosh, Fido, have you checked out this tree? Have you seen this tree before? Oh my gosh. And they'll just stop what they're doing and just like beeline it towards a person, or maybe the water bowl, or something. And that's kind of like a subject change. And it's like, okay, that's great. I got to go check this thing out really quick. Other things, just like a little bit of like nuanced understanding of some of these cues. A lot of these, sorry, I'll drink some water. A lot of these are space negotiators. So these are ways for dogs to let other dogs or people know, hey, I know this is a little bit weird, but I got to walk over here. I'm going to move through your space. Is that okay? And the opposite of that being like, hey, you're getting a little bit close. This feels a little bit funny for me. So that's what your lip licks are for. Those are space negotiators. And then your yawning, that yawning behavior it kind of means more or less the dog's like, hey, this feels funky to me, but I'm going to let this slide. So you guys can see in that picture at the bottom, that dog's getting pet on the head while it's yawning. It's most likely a person, it might even be a person that the dog knows, and they're like, I'm not really wild about this, but I'm gonna let this happen. Okay. So those are my those are my additions. Thank you.
Cool. I keep trying to move the Zoom people and it keeps getting in my way. Okay, so that is what I'm doing. Sorry about that. All right, next one. Okay, so fear signals. So again, here we have some pretty good pictures of what we're talking about here. So I'll just read through them and we can kind of talk about these images a little bit. So whale eyes, so I was talking about that a little bit with like the Boston, like their eyes just kind of, when you see the whites of the dog's eye, that means the whale eye. So when they're kind of, if you, if you had to put a sound to a whale eye, that's what I would apply. When they're like, what was that sound? What's going on? And you kind of see them pause and then you see the big eyes, that's whale eye. Tension and body. I think we know what that means. So just like any sort of like tensing up, stopping, stiffening, hackles. So, like the fur that's on the back that stands up when a dog is, fully barking, or, there's various reasons why it might happen. This guy in the bottom left has like the weirdest hackle ever, sort of, but he has like a tail tuft hackle. That's a funny one. But that counts, that's a hackle. And then drooling, this poor guy in the far right, top right, sorry, he's getting his drool on, isn't he? So that's usually like extreme stress. I see it, and dogs who get car sick tend to drool a lot. That's sort of that sort of deal. And then heavy panting, not the result of exercise or heat. So again, that's sort of like a stress situation. Open mouth, showing all their teeth. Cowering, so like this guy in the bottom right who is just not into whatever this person's trying to do with them. Shivering, and then tail, ears, mouth move out of neutral position. So like pinned ears, so if they have sort of, their ears are upright normally and they're kind of pinned down, or if they have the drop ears, they can pin those too. Tucked tail, and sorry, I have to move this thing again. It doesn't want to do it for me over. All right, and rounded back. So like the guy in the bottom right here, he has a rounded back. So those are all indications that your dog is under duress and they're not feeling good. And these are, some of the more obvious, some of these are more obvious, but I think some of the heavy panting can be confusing. And, it might be confusing because of the context of it, because it doesn't seem scary to you, or they've interacted with whatever the thing is that they're reacting to now, and suddenly they've changed their mind and now they're having an intense reaction. But these are all really important to take note of, and ideally change the environment for them so they don't have to feel like this, and help them and allow them to calm down a bit. Yeah.
Jesse, if I could just pop in for a sec,
Please do.
I just wanted to point out that this is one of those instances where it's really important to know your individual dog, because it depends. They're all different. They all have different personalities. And kind of going back a couple of slides when we said dialect, some dogs will do one or two of these things. And most dogs don't do all of them. Some do. So it's just really important to keep that in mind as well. That's all I wanted to add.
That's a very good point. And also keep in mind that just because they do some of these things doesn't necessarily mean that does mean fear for them, because each dog is individual. So, this isn't like if this list occurs, it doesn't mean for sure anything necessarily. So you want to keep in mind, you're like, well, my dog sometimes just has like a little bit of a reaction, like a whale eye about everything or whatever. And that might just be like their mode of transportation, and that's okay. But these are just sort of just a general list to sort of paint a picture for you. So yeah, hope that makes sense. Okay. So warning signals. So this is stuff where the dog has probably decided they feel something. They've decided they're not happy, and these are we should take an ear to that and probably stop doing whatever we're doing and change directions. So these include flagtail. So flagtail is like this dog on the top left. Sort of like that upright, sort of stiff. It looks like a flag, right? Like on a flagpole. And then showing canine, so showing their vampire teeth. That's what I always think of. The pointy ones. Low bark or snarling. I think we've probably heard that, all of us. Hung out with dogs enough. You're going to hear it here or there. Hackles, which I mentioned before. So this guy on the top left has his hackles up. That fur on your back, between their shoulder blades and down to their tails usually. Obviously excluding Rhodesian Ridgebacks. That's another good example. We should have put that one in there. So they always have their hackles up, right? Because that's the type of dog, that's how their hair is, but they're not necessarily constantly in warning mode. So anyways, freezing. So just totally turning into a straight mannequin. Yeah, we probably should, take heed of that. Ear forward. This guy on the top right kind of has his ears forward. The more you stare at your dog, you're going to be like, wow, their ears are moving all over the place. And some dogs are really expressive with their ears. So, if you hear a sound or something, you'll see them some of them move separately and some of them move together. They're really interesting. So that forward is kind of like, they're like, game time. We're moving forward. Weight forward as well. So, sort of on the offense, if you will, with your weight. And then a hard stare. Again, I'd say this guy in the top right he's kind of hard staring, I'd say. He's pretty much like, I would prefer that you didn't move towards me anymore, sir or ma'am. I'm feeling like that's not a great idea for you. And again, tail, ears move out of neutral position, moving forward. This again. I gotta get better at this. Sorry, guys. Here we go. Okay. And then like a really tight mouth too. That's usually an indication that we're not super happy right now. Like that picture we showed earlier with the two dogs. I guess this guy is actually the same dog. So this guy in the top right, his mouth is pretty tightly shut. He's not playing around. And then we have this little note about just not punishing warning systems. So we want to keep in mind that all this stuff is information, and this is them trying to convey something to us. So we want to make sure that we try to keep them out of situations where they feel the need to get into these sort of modes of this like warning modes or fear modes. But it does happen, somebody comes too close to them, or, play gets heightened, whatever it is. But if we punish these things out of the dogs, then they don't use them anymore, and then they're quicker to do things on the other side. So this is a warning sign that they would like things to stop or to change. And if this gets removed, then we're missing a step, and then we're losing communication, and then it looks like a bite or whatever comes out of nowhere, and that's because this is missing. So sort of like, in the human world, if you're having an altercation, you're probably going to talk about it or maybe yell about it before something physical happens. But if that's removed and there's no language had there, and you're just swinging punches all of a sudden, that's obviously very confusing for the person who's getting a punch landed. So we don't want to remove that stuff, because that becomes really confusing for everyone involved, including another dog. So there's other ways to deal with that, so we just want to keep that in mind. And it can feel like aggressive or whatever to us, but this is communication. So this is them trying to convey that they're feeling pretty stressed or overwhelmed or whatever it is. And so we want them to be able to communicate that and not escalate things.
Yeah, do you mind if I just
yeah.
add a little?
No,
So,
please.
yeah, just to piggyback on that, like one of the reasons why canine body language is so nuanced and complex and lovely is to avoid conflict. So all of the stuff that we see that we don't like, when a dog growls, when they show their teeth, all of this, the purpose of all of those things is actually to avoid the bite, avoid the conflict. Conflicts are what we call like expensive behaviors for dogs. They use up a lot of energy. And if a dog gets into a fight and they get hurt, if they're in the wild, that could reduce their chances of survival significantly. So all of these things that we might not like as humans, they're in order to prevent a situation where the dog feels like they need to bite. The other thing I wanted to point out here too is that you may have noticed that there are some crossover indicators between both our fear signals and our warning signals. So something like the hackles being up, and just for us to understand that, just like people, your dog might not be having one emotion at the same time. Okay, so they could be telling you, "Hey, I want you the heck out of my space," and they may also be scared at the same time. They're not mutually exclusive, right? So the warning signals are often asking things to move away, people or other dogs. So like if we look at the guy in the top left corner, so he's got that flagging tail, right? It's a warning signal. The hackles are up. This just means that his arousal levels have increased. But he is also showing, and his ears are forward as well. However, his body posture is sideways. It's not dead on. And you can also see some like little wrinkles and signs of anxiety around his forehead and his eyes. So there's a lot of tension in his face. So he's really feeling it. And then I just also wanted to point out the little puppy on the right, on the bottom right. This is a typical guarding posture. So you'll notice the dog's nose is pointed towards a resource, so his favorite toy, and his eyes are up and facing the intruder. Okay, so again, a lot of these warning signals are about space too, right? So, hey, I've got something really awesome here. I don't want you to come any closer. That's making me uncomfortable. Okay, good. That's it.
Cool. I think also I kind of left this out earlier. Something to think about too is like we were talking about how some of these signs, are per dog can mean different things, right? Depending on how your dog communicates or has learned to communicate. So I think like a good human example of like conveying something that might mean something and then it means something else, whatever. So like a nervous laugh, for instance, like laugh we typically categorize as happiness, and you're joyful or whatever. But like if you have a nervous laugh, like your reaction is to just laugh and try to get yourself out of a situation. That's what some of this stuff could look like too. It's like sort of that wagging tail, even though like a dog is uncomfortable. They're like, yeah, they're wagging in their tail, but they're not super happy, just like you might be like, it's like kind of the broad picture of things and like how it's being conveyed. So, when you're looking at your dog, like let your dog have some flexibility within this realm as well. We kind of allow that a lot more for humans, maybe not a lot more, but, dogs are complicated too, and they can also, like Audrey said, they can be feeling a lot of things at once because they're just not sure yet. There's like, I feel like this dog in the top left is a good example of that, where he's like, he or she is just like, like kind of pausing and taking it in and isn't super sure what to think yet. So they're kind of just like, downloading a little bit more before they proceed. And that dog might end up just like sniffing the ground after this and walking away and nothing ever happens. And it was, it was sort of just paused and took in what happened. All right, anything else to add, guys? Cool. All right, no, I know where we're at now. Okay. Oops, sorry. Overeager over here. All right. So body language during play. So, this can get confusing sometimes for us, right? We're like, they were having fun and they weren't. What happened? Well, we're going to go through some stuff and try to help you decode that a little bit. So things like, when do I intervene? When do I let things play out? And what does healthy play look like? So we'll do our best here to illustrate that. And here's some couple duos partying under here that are doing a good job. Good job, dogs that are in pictures. Okay. All right. So signs of happy, healthy play. So we have examples like play bows to invite play. So, you know, when you see a dog and they're standing and they kind of go down on their front legs, but their butt's still in the air, they look like a little wheelbarrow, I guess. That's a play bow, and it's adorable. And if you've seen it, you probably love it. Who doesn't? Okay, loose and wiggly, all good stuff. Lots of vertical bounce. So like, you know, that bouncy play that is adorable, good stuff. Any efficiency of movement. So anything sort of goofy and silly, obviously that's good stuff. Lots of role reversal and even play. So you want to make sure that when your dogs are playing that if like, let's say two of them are sort of wrestling and you want to make sure that one dog isn't always on top, that they're switching. So it's nice and even. Some dogs like to be chased and other dogs like to chase. So that's sort of like preference, but you want to make sure that if your dog is the one who's being pursued, that they feel like they can stop whenever they want. They're not, you know, if they stop, they're not going to get like cornered or something. And if the dog who's doing the chasing isn't doing anything like that either on the other end. And ideally they swap. One runs and then the other chases, and then they, you know, vice versa. And then pushing into space versus acquiescing. So same sort of deal when you see them wrestling, like they're sort of pushing this way, then they push the other way. So it's just nice and even is what you would, that's ideal. Sorry, this again. And dogs are taking frequent breaks. So that's really important too. If they're just going at 1,000,000 miles per hour, you know, for 30 minutes, their adrenaline is pumping and it's just getting higher and higher. And also they're obviously getting tired. And I don't know about you guys, but the more tired anyone gets, they don't necessarily make the best decisions. So just taking little minuscule breaks for everyone to like sort of reset, even if it's just like a blip, are really important. And you know, dogs naturally do this. Usually when they've been really well socialized, like with each other from other dogs, they learn that pretty early on. You know, it's sort of, like I said, it's just like take a breath, grab a drink of water, you know, just turn around, whatever. It sort of keeps things even, so it's not just escalating constantly. So breaks are good, moral of the story. CDA, chiming in. Okay. All right, off we go. Guess what's next? It's a yellow light. Can you believe it? I know. So when to take a break or intervene. So if you're seeing things like those hackles are going up, stiffness, repeating or ignoring cutoff signals. So those cutoff signals are those things you went over earlier, the like, you know, if a dog's sort of like sniffing all of a sudden, the other dog is like just pummeling them, you're like, okay, I think you might need to take a break, buddy. That dog clearly needs a minute. It's not a big deal. We're just going to take a little tiny break. Expression moving out of neutral. So anything sort of like moving forward or backwards, you were like, maybe you just need to just step away for a sec. Stiff tail raised high or tucked, both signs of something going on there. Ears pinned back or forward, and any of those stress signals that we talked about. So you just really want to kind of, that's a good time to be like, hey buddy, you want to get a drink of water? Or maybe you step out of the park or just walk around a little bit and just do something else, just to let them sort of regroup. And ideally they'll do like a little shake off or something like that and sort of reset. And then you're like, all right, head back in. And if not, can also just, you know, end play if that's what's necessary, if you're kind of seeing this stuff continuously. This is not, you know, like I said, this is yellow, right? We're at a yellow light. So sometimes you need to pause. Sometimes you can go right through. Sometimes you have to stop. So you just want to kind of keep that in mind. This is not a definitive time that you have to leave, but you definitely want to be kind of taking note of this stuff. And if you're like, okay, I've seen them put their hackles up like 4 times, I think maybe we're gonna definitely walk out of here. Maybe definitely take that how you want. Yeah, okay. All right, all clear from CDA. Moving on. Okay, red light. Uh-oh, guys. Okay, so when to leave the park. So they're ignoring cutoff signals entirely. So the dog is just like not getting other dogs' messages. Maybe, you're like, all right, we're gonna get out of here before something happens. Dog doesn't recover after a break. So you go in there and you're like, I saw some signs, I gave him a little break, but he just like can't, regroup and get back together. They're still showing signs of stress. So that's probably like, you know what, this isn't gonna get better. Let's get out of here. Same, showing signs of showing repeated signs of stress. Yeah, usually, I think we have this sort of impulse to want to be like, well, maybe it'll be okay. I think it's sometimes better just to err on the side of caution so that things just don't have to happen, and so we don't have altercations. And if something does happen, it's best to just get out of there. It takes dogs sometimes a full day, up to, what is it, like 3 days or something, to fully recover from an extreme adrenaline surge. So, if an altercation happens, like maybe it is sort of minor, but just having that stress, it's sort of like, I don't know if that's a good example, but I don't know, sort of having like some sort of like minor traffic accident. Like that's really stressful, and you might need a couple of days to regroup. You're not going to, ideally you're not going to just go like right back into your car, but your body needs time to recalibrate. And that's sort of the same with dogs. If we were to stay in there, everything's heightened, so they're just more likely to have something else happen, and then we're just piling stuff on top of stuff. So it's best to just be like, let's just get out of here and do something else today.
Yeah, and just to add kind of what those breaks might look like if you wanted to try to use one. So like calling your dog off to the side, if that's not working, just walk up to them lightly, lead them by the collar off to a quieter part of the park. And if your dog responds well to touch, you can use a little bit of touch to kind of help them recover. But basically what you're looking for before you let them go back in is to, you should see some softening in the body, right? So we're always looking for, is there tension there? And that will let us know if the dog's starting to feel it a little bit. So if you see or feel their muscles soften or get a little bit more buttery, you might see their ears, eyes, mouth go back to neutral. And once you can get there, you can let them go back out. So exactly what Jesse was talking about. If the stress keeps stacking, there's a good chance that it'll end in an altercation. So if we have an opportunity to pull the dog off to the side, help them recover, we can kind of reset them, and then there's a better chance that they'll have a better time for the rest of their visit to the park. And if they can't recover, obviously they're too stressed. Maybe it's time to go home and try again later.
I want to add too, we keep saying park, but this is just in general. So like if you have maybe in your backyard or in your house, maybe you have your cousin's dog over or something like that, and it's just 2 dogs playing, it's still the same step. You still want to look for taking breaks. Is still really important, even if you're at home, whatever the situation is. Those breaks are really important. It really helps level out the play. So this stuff can be applied sort of just across the board with any sort of play, anywhere, anytime, wherever you are. Take this. Okay. All right. No, just kidding. All right, next slide. Nope, I was right. All right. I think we're gonna skip this one. What do you guys think? Yeah. We're gonna go to watch this one a little bit. So here's 2 dogs who are pretty young, and honestly had a hard time playing with a lot of different dogs, but when they found each other, they were a great match. And sorry for the camera work. They're running into me, and I'm alone with like 6 dogs, so this is the best you're gonna get sometimes. But here we are. So I really like this video because they take this really nice long break. Right? They're like, what do you want to do? there they go, and they're back at it. And the play is nice and even too. They took turns chasing each other, and they're both kind of rough and tumble, but they both agreed that that was cool for them, right? So what's really amazing about dogs is that they learn how to modify playing with different kinds of dogs. That's like my favorite thing to watch, is like a big dog playing with a little dog, or whatever it is. And so sometimes some dogs just aren't super great at that, and when they find a good match like Lula and Dexter did, they could just play exactly how they wanted to play, and they didn't really have to talk about it that much. They were like, cool, I love to play like that too, let's do this. And they partied hard. Good to go to the next one? Okay. All right. So here we have a Rhodesian Ridgeback and this like labby guy. And they both do those really cool shake-offs at the front. And then look at that play bow. That's what we were talking about, the play bow. There's like a double play bow there. And then see how it's nice and even, like one's coming in and one's going out, and they just kind of like switch back and forth. Again, that Rhodesian Ridgeback was maybe like 7 months old or something. He was ginormous, but he was had a lot of energy, I will say. But again, found someone he could play with who, they just figured it out. And again, that was like a well socialized like 3-year-old dog. So he helped that little chicken nugget figure it out, which is really cool.
And so those shake-offs, by the way, which we haven't talked about yet.
That's true.
The shake-offs are adrenaline releases. So if the dog
show it again.
Really, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we are on the beach, but they're not wet. So let's make that clear too. A shake-off when you're wet is like they're trying to dry off, but this is like sort of a shake-off otherwise is, like she said, they're trying to, it's sort of, I don't know, for me it's sort of like rolling your shoulders back or something, or like trying to like, you're like, I'm fine, I'm cool, whatever. I'm just like, woof, I'm just like a little tight right now. It can mean a lot of things, but you're just trying to like loosen yourself up a little bit so that you can, continue doing whatever you're doing.
Yeah. So they're a good example of like a sign that your dog might be recovering from something. So it's kind of like, whoo,
right.
But it also lets you know that maybe there was something right before that made them feel a little bit funky. Maybe they were overstimulated about something. Maybe they were a little overwhelmed by something. So, we don't have what happened a couple seconds before this, but it could have been as simple as like, maybe somebody looked at the other dog, the wrong way, or gave him the hairy eyeball or something, or maybe they by mistake stumbled into another dog's space and we're like, whoa, I'm so sorry. And so again, that little shake off is like, whew, it's a little adrenaline release.
I wish I could remember what happened, but I have no idea. So sorry about that. This was at least 6-7 years ago. So you got me, but this is what we do have, right? All right, now we're going to go over, we're just going to look through some pictures and kind of nope, just kidding. We're going to do this first. Man, I thought I remembered what was next. Okay, so why your body language matters. Okay, so our dogs look to us to help provide information about any given situation. When you have that social bond with your dog, ideally they check in with you about things and you check in with them too. So, they're constantly looking at you and trying to decode what's going on. So if we're holding our bodies tensely, they may feel the need to be extra vigilant. If we're sitting back and relaxing, they might decide that's a great time for a little nap. So it's up to us to help our dogs navigate this crazy world by leading by example as best as we can. So, easier said than done sometimes, but, even if like you're walking your dog and you are a little stressed, for instance, you might start choking down on that leash, and start white knuckling it. And that's pretty normal, but you want to remember that your dog can feel that. It channels down the leash down to them, and they might be like, okay, so they're like on my leash. There's clearly something happening. I probably should start scanning. It's likely to inform them in some sort of way. Also, I think this is a good example. My dog knows that it takes me 60,000 times to leave the house. So even though I'm doing all the signals that it's time to leave, she's like, yeah, right. I know you're going to run up the stairs like 4 more times. And that's because she looks at me all the time and knows my I guess my schedule. So it's just, they're downloading information all the time. And so any way we can sort of help them, maybe they don't need to be vigilant. Maybe we can help them relax a little bit in situations where you're like, I know it does seem stressful, but actually we're fine. So just leading by example is really important, and just keep that in mind that you could be, accidentally telling them something you didn't mean to. But you also could be telling them things you do want to. So, you just keep that in mind. Okay. All right, now here are the pictures, right? Yes, okay. It's like they're in here somewhere. Okay. Audrey, I'm tagging you.
Yeah. So
Yep.
this is a topic near and dear to my heart. Because I have a young child and I also have a dog, right? And when one of my dogs when my child was growing up was actually very afraid of children. So I spent a lot of time observing her, my kid, and observing my dog who was afraid of children too. So we see a lot of these pictures on the internet. Oh my gosh, it's so cute. A baby with a dog, a kid hugging a dog. And I have to say the vast majority of the stuff that you will see online, you can see some clear indicators from the dog that it is stressing them out. So with this little guy here, you can see tight, mouth is tightly closed. Okay, so there's a lot of tension in the mouth. There's stress lines around his eyes and mouth and a little bit of furrowing in his brow. Whale eye, right? And then the ears pinned back. So there's a lot of really clear indicators here that the dog's like, this is not great for me. Most likely he is staring at his handler, begging for help. Can you get this kid off of me, please?
It's like, there's a child on my back. I don't know if you've noticed.
Yeah.
Please help. SOS.
Exactly. So, so again, these are all of these, like what we consider subtle signals, right? That the dog feels uncomfortable, but this is behavior that might precede a growl or a snap. Or depending on the temperament of the dog just sits there and feels terrible. So we always want to keep this stuff in mind and watch our dogs carefully. This behavior can also not just happen around kids, but around adults too. So I've seen quite a few dogs, one of my own actually, who just didn't like touch that much. So anything that involved a lot of affection, it made him feel uncomfortable, and he would get up and leave. And not, often what the signals I saw from him were lots of lip licking. He would do lots of lookaways, and I would see the whites of his eyes, and I was like, okay, he's not enjoying this. So I would leave him alone.
Okay.
Okay. Cute puppy.
Yeah, he's cute. Let's start there. Congratulations. You're adorable. You can see, like, his head's kind of lowered, his ears are back. He's a little unsure, if nothing else. He's got that paw lifted as well, so he's sort of like, again, these are sort of like earlier signs of, again, it could turn into like, he's like, oh, I just didn't recognize you. I mean, he's on a leash, he probably recognizes me. But he's sort of like, okay, and sort of considering whether he wants to come close to this person or not. And he's doing his best, like, puppy eyes to be like, I am super adorable and not a threat. I hope that's clear.
Yeah. So overwhelming the dog saying like, I'm not a threat, don't mind me. And you're seeing a lot of appeasement behaviors from the dog. So like, don't hurt me, please. So that's what that paw lift is. It's an appeasement behavior. You can also start to see a little bit of a rounded back here. And then if we also look at where his body weight is shifted, it's leaning back. So obviously if it's leaning back, the dog's like, I'm just gonna back out of here. It means they want to move away, essentially.
Okay, I'm just gonna like skip ahead a little bit and see what we have. I think, sorry, we're running low on time. So do you guys have a preference which one we go over? Let's do like one more maybe.
Maybe that one with this one, which I find interesting.
Oh, the last one, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
That one. Okay. So this is like, I really like this one because this is like a common greeting that I see. So the dog on the right, let's take a look at him, right? Where's his body weight shifted? Boop, forward. So he's applying pressure to that little pupperdo right there. His tail is stiff as a board. Okay, so there's a lot
Yeah, flag tail.
flag tails. That's a really good example of flag tail. So I see a lot of dog greetings where a dog moves in like this, and then their tail's behind them doing this. Right? That's not a happy tail. Those are warning signals. So that dog's pushing into space to be like, hey, I'm going to suss you out right now. There's a lot of tension in this dog's mouth and his ears are forward. So this is a really tense moment. Now the other dog recognizes that this is a really tense moment. And so what's he doing? He's like, so he is making himself look smaller. So he's lowering his body. You're seeing his tail starting to tuck too. And you're seeing kind of like some of these like little appeasement behaviors where he's like, don't hurt me, please. But he's clearly stressed. So ears back, stress lines around the mouth and eyes. And you're starting to see the corners of his mouth, even though his mouth is tightly closed, start to pull back. Okay, so moving out of neutral again. And this is a pretty typical greeting. Like I see a lot of greetings. Like,
Right.
Yeah. And so you guys might notice if you're walking your dog down the street, a lot of greetings look like this. And greetings on leash are often pretty stressful for this reason. So just something for you to keep in mind.
And it doesn't necessarily mean this is going to turn into a definite altercation, but it's just to give you an indication that like the dog on the left is probably like, oh. So like if that were my dog, I'd be like, we're gonna go, we're not gonna do this, just because I don't know what that dog's gonna do next. You know, maybe that dog just comes up really fast and hard like that, and that's sort of like their MO. You know, we're trying to help you stay out of trouble. So these are like sort of earlier signs, if you can see them, to keep it moving, you know. All right. Okay, so here are some really cool resources. The one on the left is a book, and it has, it's by Lily Chen, and it's called Doggie Language, and it's full of illustrations, and it's amazing. It's really cute. If you're interested in taking a deeper dive, it's really cool too, because it's separated by the body parts. So it's like ears, mouth, whatever. You can just flip through and go to each section if you want. And she does different kinds of dogs too, so you can see what that looks like on a different dog. It's a really great book, and she has a million illustrations too. I constantly use her stuff. She's just really good at adorably capturing body language, right? Like she's the best. And then this video, this on the right is a video called Stop the 77, which is 77% of dog bites happen by family dogs or dogs, you know, like friends' dogs. So it has a lot of really good information. It does have this baby kid voice in it that is something, but just get the information from it. It's really good. And it's a short watch too. It's good and it's from the family dog, so it's good for people who have kids or around kids with their dog, or just people really, I think. I think it can be applied to any humans, right? Okay, anything else, guys, about that stuff? Okay, and here we are. This is our last slide. We made it. So if you want to contact us, we'd love to hear from you. Our website is constellationdogacademy.com. There's our phone number, and we have an email at the bottom. This dog will get back to you right away if you send us an email. He's very prompt. I don't know about her on the phone. She looks like she's got other things going on, but anyways, if you guys want to contact, this is how you can. Yeah, thank you so much for listening to us and having us today. We're really excited to be doing these workshops. Really appreciate everyone's enthusiasm, and I hope this was helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Jessie. I think there's like 3 questions in the chat here.
Cool, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Or should I leave this up for a sec? Does anyone else need to see it? Don't want to move it too fast, you know. Okay, I'll stop sharing it. All right. Okay. Okay, so our first question is, any suggestions on how to prepare and handle a fearful reaction to fireworks on a walk? Okay, that's tricky. And the worst part is that there's fireworks all the time. So I totally feel your pain. Um, oh, yeah, that's a tough one.
So, you can't control the fireworks outside. So a lot of times when we're doing counter conditioning work or desensitization work, meaning like helping to change the dog's emotional reaction to a stimuli, one of the things that we do is we take that stimuli and we try to like turn the volume down, like mute it a little bit. So that's very difficult to do outside. You have no control over that. So basically we would be dividing this work into prep work, basically work that you would be doing inside your home where the dog feels comfortable, and then work that we would do to kind of help mediate the stress response if possible, right? The work that we do beforehand, so like the sound, we would do a lot of sound work or sound desensitization work. So you can do something like we want the dog to hear and relax around that sound in a safe place, so inside your home. For some dogs, the sound's muted enough right there where they can, we can give them like a bone or a chewy or something to work on, or click and feed them for hearing the stimuli. And for other dogs, even being inside your home, the fireworks is too much also, right? So we would employ something like a brown or pink noise machine to help kind of dull, again, turn down the volume, help dull the stimuli, so that it's at, your dog can kind of like digest it in a smaller piece. You can also look for recordings of fireworks, either on YouTube or Spotify. Turn the volume down really low, and start to try to associate that with a self-soothing activity like chewing on a bone or a frozen Kong, things like that. Then over time you turn the volume up. So turn the volume up on the video or turn down your pink or brown noise machine, so on and so forth. So by the way, this is a process called behavior modification. It is not an easy thing to do. I would probably enlist the help of a trainer for this, but this is kind of what the trajectory looks like. Now, dealing with your dog's reaction when they're outside, to help reduce the intensity of that reaction, help them feel more comfortable. One, maybe we prep them for the situation with some sort of stress support. So either something herbal or pharmaceutical, depending on the intensity of the reaction. And then, other things you can do depending on the dog. Sometimes touch really helps. So sometimes giving them a little massage, chest, mouth area, hindquarters to help them recover. Some dogs respond well to that. Some dogs, touch does not help. Some dogs respond well to baby talk, and some dogs respond well to movement. So sometimes just moving the dog in a controlled way instead of letting them panic and run can help them. So it's a more complex process than that, but those are the nuts and bolts, if that makes sense and helps. Okay. Rebecca or Jesse, do you want to talk? Oh, I guess I should, since I said this. Okay, so what's the difference between a head-on and side stance in this context? So in that previous picture, remember we saw the dog kind of standing sideways, looking unsure, but also giving warning signals. A head-on approach from a dog is a lot more threatening than a side approach. Which is also, again, one of the reasons why on-leash greetings can be so tricky. What do we do as humans? How do we approach another person on a walk or a dog? Like that, okay? So that head-on approach is a lot more threatening. You're applying a lot more pressure. That's what we call it. So, also in that video that Jesse showed with those two white dogs playing, when they took a break, what position were their bodies in? So they actually moved their bodies parallel to each other, so they weren't facing each other, and they both did lookaways. And that's how they orchestrated the break. So they relieved some social pressure by turning their bodies and their heads. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, good.
Okay, sorry, real quick. I'm going to run because I got to get to the park. But thank you so much, everyone. And if you're at the park, I'll see you in a little bit. Rebecca and Audrey, you're officially taking the helm. Okay.
Thanks, Jesse.
Thanks, Megan.
Thanks, Jesse.
Jesse. The question about how can you help a puppy learn other dogs' behavior signals, that's a really good question. And that's going to vary on your puppy's experience with their litter mates and their mother. They learn a lot of that from their litter mates and from when they're little like that. Not every puppy has that opportunity. And every puppy needs to practice. So if you think about maybe a preschool group, you see lots of different behaviors happening. You'll have the kid that eats the paste, the kid that bites his friends, right? That's the same thing with puppies. So helping them practice that. And knowing this body language is very helpful. It's important that you see that because you can get in there and help them take a break. Again, with my preschool metaphor, very few kids that I've ever known say, I think I need to go take a nap right now. They're just going to keep going and keep going and keep going. And the same thing is true of puppies. So helping them back off that. And the other thing that I think is really important is exposing puppies to a safe older dog who does have a good social vocabulary. They will learn what works and what doesn't by hanging out with that dog too.
Thank you. And I think there's just one more question that was just added that's similar to what you just answered.
Suggestions on how to introduce to new animals when they're not around other animals. Slowly. It's good, very slowly, very safely. So you need to do a lot of management in that situation. So having your dog on a leash, having it behind a baby gate is a great way to start that. That's going to vary greatly too on the dog. Is the dog interested in chasing a cat? Which animal too? Is the dog interested in chasing a cat? Even introducing two other dogs slowly and safely. So you're going to get your management in place first. Sometimes allowing them to see each other from a distance can help, and that gives you an idea of how it's going to go, right? If you let your dog see another dog and you start seeing some of these body language, like you see some stiffening, you see some interest, kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of how to move closer. And then I would say like short and sweet introduction if things are going well, if you're getting the impression that your dog is like loose and interested and not going to make any rash decisions. A quick little sniff and then backing away again.
And just to add to that too, I think what gets undervalued a lot of times from the human standpoint is observation, right? So just like your dog being able to observe the behavior of the other animal, whether it's a cat or a dog, from a distance to gather information like, hey, what's this animal's deal? How does it move? And we, that information gathering session, obviously we want it to be at enough of a distance where your dog can stay relaxed. So depending, again, 100% depends on the dog. Sometimes that can just be behind a baby gate. For some dogs, that's like a football field away. So it's really dog to dog, kind of how you deal with all of those variables, but do not underestimate the power of what a good observation session can do for socialization.
I want to stress again, I said to do this slowly, but I can't really emphasize enough how we tend to rush things along as people. We're like, or we want to see what happens. If you're not sure, back off again. Always err on the side of caution with this because you can develop bad habits, someone can get hurt. So just go slowly. Just add to that.
Okay, guys, are there any other questions? I think Jesse's going to be at the park. So if you guys want to go and talk to her about behavior, anything like that with your dog, I think she'll be available in like 10 minutes. But otherwise, I just wanted to thank Constellation Dog Academy for this class. It's been really awesome. And I hope that everyone here learned something. But yeah, keep an eye on our social media for upcoming classes. We have a community meeting coming up this coming Wednesday. If you want to join, we've been doing them on Zoom. We may shift over to in-person meetings at International as it gets nicer out, but just keep an eye if you want to get involved. We'll be sending out an email and social posts in the coming weeks for our community meeting. Yeah, thanks again for signing up, though. This was really awesome, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.